The objective of the Gerdau Contractor Safety Policy is to create a foundation for a healthy and safe work environment for contractors, our employees, and the general public. This will be achieved by compliance with state, federal, and provincial regulations, as well as adherence to our Contractor Safety Policy. This policy applies to all contractors and subcontractors performing work on any Gerdau property. It is each contractor and subcontractor employee's responsibility to comply with this policy at all times while conducting activities for Gerdau. Your employer, as an approved contractor of Gerdau, agreed to comply with our Contractor Safety Policy, as well as follow all the laws and regulations of the applicable state, federal, and provincial agencies. It is your employer's responsibility to be aware of and inform you of all hazards associated with the work and how to protect yourself from those hazards. Your employer is responsible for supplying you with all personal protective equipment, including footwear, blue hard hats with chin straps, safety glasses, and safety locks. Your employer must conduct an orientation meeting to explain all the rules and policies. Your responsibility as a contractor's employee is to attend this orientation meeting prior to starting work. Your employer will also give you ongoing safety training with daily toolbox meetings at the beginning of each shift and weekly safety meetings. You are expected to report to work physically able to perform your job. You must perform all your work according to Gerdau guidelines, those guidelines required by your employer, and applicable governmental laws and regulations. For everyone's protection, maintain a safety awareness attitude while performing your work. Contractor and subcontractor employees and a Gerdau representative must participate in the pre-job safety meeting and complete the process before performing any contracted work for Gerdau. The pre-job safety meeting is a mechanism to review the safety expectations for work at Gerdau and to assist us in evaluating hazards and PPE requirements for the job. All employees working on the project must also participate in completing a preliminary risk assessment, or PRA, and associated permits for the project. The PRA is used to fully evaluate the project's specific hazards and to identify and implement controls via the required permits to conduct the day's activities in a safe manner. The PRA and permits must remain posted on the job site. During the hazard identification process, consider the tasks people will be performing and whether these tasks could impact others. Do the following hazards exist? Traffic hazards. Look up, down, 360 around to identify pedestrian hazards or risk to others. Pedestrian safety is a key focus for Gerdau. Contractors are required to remain within the designated walkways whenever walking within a Gerdau facility. Equipment hazards. Is the equipment in good working order, compliant to Gerdau standards, and are all operators properly trained? Energy hazards, including electricity, pneumatic, hydraulic, gravity, steam heat, springs, and fuel. Chemical hazards, confined space hazards, fire hazards, and fall hazards. We next review the specific PPE requirements for the task. Blue hard hat with chin strap, electrician's gloves, safety boots. The styles may be specific. Check with the facility for their requirements. Should this be metatarsals? Sealed eyewear, shirt sleeves, arm protection, flame-resistant clothing, burn goggles, welding eye protection, face shield or grinding hazards, leg protection, work gloves, fall protection arrest system, including fall harness and lanyard, dust mask, and respirator. The PRA is next reviewed by the contractor and Gerdau persons in charge. Everyone understands their safe work requirements. Everyone knows what to do. Everyone has PPE required. Is it used? Right tools available and secure. Permits issued as necessary. The area is isolated and properly marked. Attention person responsible. Ensure training and signature of all participants. Ensure monitoring implementation of service. Stop and ask for help if you have any questions for safe work procedures. Based on the above information, we can now complete the specifics for the PRA. We list the steps for each task individually. Next, for each step, we list its specific hazard or hazards and determine if a permit is required for the hazard. We identify other actions to control the hazard and then determine who is responsible for the control. Implementation of the control must be documented before proceeding. The PRA is completed, reviewed, and signed daily by all parties involved, including contractors, subcontractors, and Gerdau employees. Examples of permits potentially required are chemical permit for hazardous chemicals, confined space entry permit, electrical non-routine, excavation permit, heights permit, hot work permit, mobile crane or heavy lift permit, and radiation permit. The purpose of this process is to ensure that everyone understands the risks inherent in the job and have planned adequate safeguards to avoid accidents and injury before any work takes place. This requires communication among all parties on the job, especially the Gerdau and contractor project managers. Gerdau feels so strongly about the importance of certain policies in keeping you safe that they have designated those as cardinal safety rules. There is zero tolerance for serious and/or intentional violations of our cardinal safety rules. Violation of a cardinal safety rule will result in the immediate removal of the contractor employee. Above and beyond the zero tolerance provisions, contract firms can receive a fine of $1,000 per violation of our cardinal rules. The project engineer, project coordinator, and plant safety manager will determine appropriate sanctions to include one of the following: warning letter, notice of suspension, company probation, company suspension, company barring. Cardinal safety rules include lockout-tryout for failure to follow lockout-tryout procedures, fall protection for failure to use adequate fall protection or fall prevention measures, material handling for failure to operate equipment in a safe manner, being trained and authorized, rail safety for failure to follow rail safety procedures, stopping for locomotives, and violating the red zone, confined space for failure to follow confined space procedures, safety devices for failure to follow lockout, tagout, tryout for defeating, ignoring, or rendering inoperable safety devices. Additional contractor cardinal rules include work permits for failure to utilize work permits when required, drug and alcohol use for failure to meet requirements of our drug and alcohol policy, accident reporting for failure to report an accident in the appropriate time frame, and equipment use for using equipment without proper authorization or training. Unless you have been authorized by your Gerdau site contact, do not make any connection to operating electrical, gas, oxygen, water, pneumatic, hydraulic, or process lines. Do not turn on or off any of these utility lines. Gerdau has a lockout, tagout, tryout policy to protect you from the accidental startup of machinery. After the completion of the daily project safety review, all contractors and subcontractors must proceed to the affected area to complete the necessary equipment lockouts using the Gerdau-provided lockout-tryout procedure. All contractor employees are required to participate in this process, and each must individually apply their lock or locks to the equipment or group lockbox. Always review the control of kinetic energy in motion and potential energy stored with your Gerdau representatives. Anytime you must place your head or hand or any other part of your body in a position where you are at risk of being injured by moving or energized equipment, or anytime you are required to remove or bypass a guard or other safety devices, you must contact your Gerdau representative to coordinate the lockout-tryout procedure. This procedure is designed to make sure every source of energy has been disabled, that every employee applies his lock, and that it cannot be re-energized until every employee involved unlocks it. Each lock must meet the OSHA identification requirements for each person lock. Contractors are not authorized to shut down, stop, or de-energize any plant equipment or machinery. A qualified Gerdau employee must do this. If you see someone's lock on a piece of equipment, leave it alone. That person is the only one allowed to remove that lock. You must receive formal training and certification on lockout-tryout before participating in this program. Do not leave the site with your lock still in place. This could cause tremendous inconvenience for your company and Gerdau if we had to track you down to start up the machine. It is Gerdau's policy that you wear fall protection equipment whenever you climb 4 feet above the ground, unless the area is surrounded by a permanent stationary deck with properly equipped guardrails, or work in a man lift or scissor lift, or anytime you work off a ladder over 4 feet above the ground and you are not able to maintain a 3-point contact, or when you work over 4 feet deep pits or basement openings. Acceptable fall protection includes a full body harness and shock-absorbing lanyards, or SRLs. The lanyards must be tied off to a structure capable of supporting 5,000 pounds for each person attached. 100% tie-off is mandatory. You may be required to wear a dual lanyard. Fall protection belts are not approved for use at any time. The use of forklifts as man lifts is strictly forbidden. Contractor personnel must receive adequate training before working at heights. Gerdau does not provide either the equipment or the training for implementing any contractor's work at heights program that may be required to perform the contracted work. Both are the sole responsibility of the contractor. Proof of certification must be provided to your Gerdau representative. You must be adequately trained and receive certification to use mobile equipment. Inspect and document your mobile equipment safety devices and all operational systems prior to use each day. Do not stand or walk under loads suspended from cranes or the empty hook of a crane. Listen for the siren, horn, bell, or other signaling devices that signal the approach of a crane. Keep all parts of the body in the clear of lifts while tension is being applied. All cranes used on site must be inspected regularly, including daily operator pre-use inspections and annual inspections. The crane must be certified to operate. You must be adequately trained and receive certification to use a boom lift or scissor lift. Proof of training must be provided to your Gerdau representative, and you must be tied off to the floor of the device before performing work. Inspect and document your aerial equipment safety devices and all operational systems prior to use each day. Use of an aerial lift at a Gerdau facility requires a spotter to escort the lift during movement. The spotter must always be visible to the equipment operator and provide assistance with clearances and pedestrians that may be in the equipment's path. When the aerial lift is stationary, the area below must be marked with cones and/or caution tape to prevent pedestrians from traveling under the work area. Aerial lifts can be used directly over pedestrian pathways, provided the necessary precautions are taken to close off the walkway and provide a temporary, safe pedestrian route. Riding on locomotives, rail cars, or other transportation equipment is prohibited except when required by your job. Do not crawl or climb over or under cars. Only drive across railroads at the crossings provided for that purpose, and only after coming to a complete stop. Always park vehicles or equipment a minimum distance of 10 feet out from the center line of any railroad track. Only walk across railroad at designated walkways. When crossing a track with standing cars, maintain a minimum of 25 feet clearance from the end of the car in case of sudden movement. Contractor employees will not defeat, remove, ignore, or render inoperative a safety device or guards on machinery, equipment, or tools. Contractors cannot perform any work for Gerdau unless a PRA and associated permits have been completed. All employees working on the project must review and sign the PRA. Then it must remain with the persons conducting the work. Completing the PRA and associated permits require a thorough analysis of all of the hazards inherent in the job at hand. The contractor is asked to identify any hazards that may become present, including exposed electricity, excavations, toxic substances, and poisonous atmospheres. The pre-task safety checklist section requires an evaluation of your need for protective equipment, such as gloves, face shields, and safety locks. Work is not authorized until the PRA is completed and signed. Associated permits, such as confined space entry, energized work, Hot work, excavation, etc. may also be required depending on the scope of your project and as determined when completing the preliminary risk assessment. Anyone working on Gerdau property must not be under the influence of or in possession of illegal drugs or alcohol. Depending on state, federal, and provincial guidelines, you may be asked to take a drug test if you are involved in an accident or incident, or if you appear to be under the influence. Your company may have its own testing program to include random or annual testing. Any contractor who refuses to submit to a drug and alcohol test, or who tests positive for drugs and/or alcohol, will be removed from work at any of our sites. Firearms and ammunition are not to be brought onto Gerdau property. If you are involved in or observe an accident, injury, or even a near-miss incident, you are required to report it immediately to your supervisor and the Gerdau representative. Also, report any hazardous conditions you encounter during the course of your work. You must report all injuries to our representative, no matter how slight. Do not use any Gerdau equipment. If our equipment is required, we will provide an operator, or the contractor company must complete and meet the Equipment Hold Harmless Agreement. Where there is danger from moving machinery or equipment, proper protective devices such as flags, signs, signal lights, derails, rail clamps, or watchmen shall be provided. All contractors must wear ANSI-approved hard hats at all times in designated hard hat areas. They must be blue hard hats with chin straps. You must wear safety glasses with side shields at all times. Wear a face shield if you are performing any grinding, chipping, burning, spray washing, or similar tasks. Use only those welding hoods that attach to the hard hat or are usable while wearing a hard hat. Anytime you are working on our property, you must wear protective safety steel-toed boots that come above the ankle. Specific hazards may dictate that you wear special protective footwear, such as rubber boots, foot protectors, or metatarsal guards. You are required to wear gloves around any operation that presents a hazard to your hands. You must wear special hand protection when working near chemicals or high-voltage equipment, and at other times when safety conditions call for such protection. The only exception is while you are engaged in an activity that presents an entanglement hazard or while you're on break. Long pants and long-sleeved shirts are required when working on site. Your clothing must be in good repair and conform to the requirements of the working area. Flame-retardant clothing must be worn when working in close proximity to molten metal. Don't wear oil-soaked or grease-covered clothing. If you are working around open flames or molten metals, don't wear nylon, polyester, or other synthetic materials, even as undergarments. You may be required to wear respiratory protection wherever you will be working in dangerously contaminated air. You are not permitted to wear jewelry, including rings, chain bracelets, or necklaces. Medical alert bracelets or necklaces are the only permissible jewelry. In the United States, if you are going to be working around live, high-voltage circuits, your flash protection must conform to the NFPA 70E standard. If in Canada, please refer to your Ministry of Labor guidelines for your province. Depending on where you are working on plant property, hearing protection may be required. Signs have been posted in high-noise areas to warn you to wear hearing protection. You must also wear hearing protection whenever the equipment you are using, such as jackhammers, pneumatic wrenches, and saws, is loud enough to damage your ears. You must wear hearing protection in the form of moldable earplugs or adjustable earmuffs in any of these high-noise areas. Ask your supervisor for hearing protection if none is immediately available. Enter Gerdau property only through the designated gate. Park personal vehicles in designated parking areas only. Parking of personal vehicles on streets and in or around buildings is prohibited. Obey the posted speed limit and traffic signs. Heavy mobile equipment and material haulers are constantly on the move and have right-of-way. Pedestrians are constantly crossing the roadways. Remain alert. Proper housekeeping is one of the key elements for a safe and healthy workplace. Substandard housekeeping also indicates a lack of job pride and performance. Store all materials in an orderly fashion in the designated areas where the work is to be performed. Clean all spills immediately and report all spills to your Gerdau representative. Store all tools and other equipment in proper locations when they are not in use. Keep stairs, steps, ladders, and walkways clean and free of materials that might cause tripping or slipping. Contractors are solely responsible for properly disposing of all waste generated by them on a daily basis. Make sure that all your electrical equipment is properly grounded and in good repair. Use ground fault circuit interrupts with all portable electric tools. Trigger locks on portable electric tools are not allowed. Worn, frayed, or spliced electrical cords or cables must be removed from service. The contractor is required to become familiar with any piping he may be working around to ensure proper identification of such piping. If the contractor is unsure of piping, naming of pipes, or color coding, he must obtain classification of said piping before performing any work. Become familiar with the locations and use of portable fire extinguishers located in your work area. Each company vehicle and all powered equipment must be equipped with appropriate fire extinguishing equipment. Notify our safety department if you must take any firefighting system out of service. If you have received fire extinguisher training and feel comfortable doing so, attempt to extinguish a small fire with a fire extinguisher. Report the incident to your site contact, the department supervisor, or any member of our management team. In case of a large fire, warn personnel in the area to evacuate the area. Then, contact the on-site emergency contact. Keep all flammable refuse in proper containers. Store flammable liquids in fireproof containers. Properly secure all compressed gases cylinders. Before using a cutting torch or welding, complete a hot work permit and have it signed off by your site contact. Obtain permission from your site contact before using any temporary heating devices. For safety, several areas in our plants have been designated no smoking areas. Ashtrays or sand pails are provided in areas where smoking is permitted. Smoking materials shall not be thrown on the ground or floor of the work area or anywhere on site. Do not use or carry matches, propane or butane lighters on your person in PPE required areas. Never attempt to use a cutting or welding torch as a lighter. Contractors performing work at our plant must provide a complete list of all substances or chemicals they will bring onto plant property. Contractors must maintain MSDS sheets on site for any chemicals and materials they will use on site. Contractors must provide our representative a MSDS before any hazardous substance may be brought onto the site. Properly label and identify all containers brought onto our property. Contractors shall provide training to anyone who may become exposed to any hazardous substances brought into the plant. Should you encounter any asbestos or asbestos-containing materials, do not disturb it. Notify us immediately. Machine guards and other safety devices are provided for your protection. Don't remove any guards except to make repairs, lubricate or clean, and then only if you are authorized and if all steps